Hi guys, Rob Flux here from Property Developer Network, and I'm here with Matt Campbell. He's one of my former students in my property development formula program.
Yes.
Here with a recently approved development approval site on site, real deal in the field, mate. So we're going to interrogate you with some of the good, the bad, and the ugly as to what's happened on this deal. And it's been a bit of a journey, hasn't it, mate?
Absolutely. It's been a long journey, but we've got the DA outcome, which is good.
Okay, so if we go back in time, a long way back, this was actually a site that I looked at and I turned down, along with a lot of other people, because the purchasing price at the time was way up here, and there were a few challenges on the site that everyone identified. And you've come along like Stephen Bradbury, and everyone's conditioned him down, and you've snaffled at the last minute.
Yeah, absolutely. It was with another colleague and we were working together, and we happened to come across this one here in Toowong. And like Stephen Bradbury, we managed to negotiate the site for a great price, but it has got some challenges, and it's taken us a long time to get to the development approval. But we're here now.
So we're going to go through some of those challenges and how Matt very creatively was able to solve some of those. And
awesome.
Mate. So we'll start with, let's do a little bit of a guided tour. Okay, so come with me.
All right.
So a little bit of a guided tour. So existing home, you can see on quite a steep trajectory would be one of the right words for that.
Absolutely.
And as we come along here, there's quite a decent dip as we actually get back into the backyard, to the point where the biggest challenge on here is actually a thing called lawful point of discharge.
Correct.
So lawful point of discharge is trying to get stormwater off of the site.
Yep.
And because everything runs away from the street,
like this.
gravity says you need to go away from the street.
Correct.
But we came up with a couple of different plan A, plan B, plan C, and how far, I think we got to plan D by the time we actually executed this for you, mate.
Yeah, we did. Rob's exactly right. In fact, all the teaching says you don't buy a site like this, but we did our due diligence, and we had 3 or 4 options to solve the biggest issue with this site being stormwater. The lawful point of discharge through 3 neighbours and 5 lots didn't quite work. We got 2 of the 3 across the line, but we could never get the 3rd. So therefore we were able to demonstrate to council that their preference around lawful point of discharge was not possible. So we then went another path, which was basically like a rubble pit or an infiltration system. And council did not like that. So we were back to the drawing board, and I must admit, at that point I was a little concerned. But we did go back and look at Plan C and Plan D and the viability of those options, and we managed to get Plan C across the line, which is a curb and channel solution for both the existing house and also the house on the rear. Yeah,
and so the way to achieve that, it's something that most people don't actually recognise as possible. One of the things that council is concerned at with a lawful point of discharge is that you're going to flood neighbours downstream, and so if they approve the subdivision up front, they have no control of the dwelling that's going to go in.
Correct.
And so they have no control as to what's going to happen with the stormwater going out. So I came up with the brainwave for Matt, and the brainwave was, if we actually put a house on there that the roof line is above street level, and if we can get from the roof line down to the street, so it's actually technically going uphill on dirt but downhill from the roof, then we can actually demonstrate lawful point of discharge. And we've managed to prove that you can go uphill, mate.
Absolutely. And at the time I was one of Rob's mentoring clients in the PDF program, and I remember going to Rob saying, how do we solve this problem? I think Rob was surprised that I was still even looking at the deal, but we certainly got the deal at the right price to solve the problems. But it was a 1 application across 2 stages, and we had to commit to actually buying the house on the rear, and to actually include that as part of the development application to be able to demonstrate to council how that house would actually solve the issue of the site being stormwater.
Yeah, and to just paraphrase what Matt said a different way so that people can actually catch it, we had to actually build the finished house at the tail end, proving the lawful point of discharge before they would allow the subdivision. Now, normally it's the other way around. And so it's an interesting scenario where normally you're only allowed physically one house on one title.
Correct.
So council has actually reversed that decision, said, well, you can have two houses on the one title temporarily until such time as we can actually get that lawful LPOD out, mate.
Correct. So from a project cash flow point of view, it does mean more cash on the line to get the outcome through plan sealing and the second title. But it's in a great suburb of Brisbane that it's just dollars on the line that we'll get back well and truly when we actually sell both of the two homes.
And so the next problem that we had are these beautiful trees that are behind us. There's a ton of them. Every single one of them is on the nature strip. So which means protected trees, mate.
Yes. So I know everything about stormwater, the good and the bad and the ugly. I now know everything about the tree protection zone, which
I've shrunk, mate. That's how far. That's how much the slope is right here. So it drops off very quickly, very sharply.
But yeah, these trees are on the council strip, and they are amazing gum trees up here in Queensland. But council's very particular with what you can and can't do, and they have to stay is basically their position. And the protection zone, like the ring around the centre of each of the trees, they're very protective. Very protective on what you can and can't do in terms of structural buildings and carports.
So in order to build a new home, well, you could build from scratch.
Yes.
But Queensland's pretty famous for relocatable homes.
Yes.
So we're going to chop one up into how many pieces, mate?
2.
Going to chop it up into 2 pieces, and we're going to slide it in between a couple of these trees and a very skinny gap beside the house.
Yes.
As we go down a 45-degree angle, and it can all be done.
Yeah, that's right. So we've engaged one of the house removing companies that are well known to the developer network, and they've been on site a couple of times, and we have an actual removal plan that we've demonstrated to council how 1, the house will get onto site safely, 2, that it won't impact the trees, and that 3, they're going to get an outcome, an acceptable outcome per the development approval that meets the traditional building character overlay that is evident in this street and this particular property.
So what I would say is not a deal for the faint of heart. So Matt has certainly, I guess, taken on an elephant and bitten a lot of the leg, most of the body. I think the trunk is gone. Now all he's got to do is just get the body, and then we.
Yeah, exactly. I think a key point is during the negotiations, we did buy the price as though we could not develop. So we bought it for the price of 1, and we've renovated that. So if, in the event that we weren't able to subdivide and get the second lot, we would be able to sell the house and still make a small profit. We did spend a bit more on the renovation of the house with a few challenges. But that's another conversation.
But it's come up beautifully, yeah?
It has come up great, yeah.
So it's generating rent while all of this work's going to happen in the background, so that's improved your cash flow.
Absolutely.
It is genuinely in a very nice location. It is somewhat adjacent to a cemetery.
A cemetery in a busy road, but the cheapest house in a great suburb with a subdividable opportunity. City glimpses still.
Yeah.
It's a win-win for myself as a working party and also for my joint venture party in Sydney, who I do have to credit has been very patient to stay with me in the journey, and that's a credit to him that we've both been aligned with the strategy, the risk of the strategy, and all the mitigations that we would invoke with the team, the town planner, the civil planner, everyone that was involved to get this outcome. So we're very happy.
And I think that's a matter of communicating with your investor, letting them know, I guess, the risks, the challenges, plan A, B, C, and D.
Correct.
And keeping them informed along the way, which you've done magnificently, mate. So
onwards and upwards, right?
So, mate, congratulations.
Thank you.
Really appreciate, I guess, seeing your growth in the journey.
Thank you.
I've seen that whilst this one's in train, you've been smashing it in a couple of other deals across the board as well.
Correct.
So looking forward to giving you guys an update and actually doing the full real deal reveal upon completion. We may even come and do the, I guess a video recording when the house comes on site, because seriously, you have to see where this has got to come. So this is quite a journey that this house is going to go on. So see if I can step out of the way and hopefully you guys can see. So it's got to get between that house there and that tree there. So and down a 45-degree angle there. That's basically what we have to try and achieve here.
Yeah.
As Matt said, we've had the house relocators out a couple of times and actually had a look at that, and it can all be done. So
yeah, absolutely. So it's now a matter of executing it per the plan, mitigating the identified risks, and just following the process really.
Well, the good news is it's processed from here.
Yes,
so you've done the hard yards, getting the development approval. Now it's just really executing against that, mate. So,
but thank you for the initial strategy. I remember it's clear as day is sort of coming to you initially with how do we solve the problems identified with this site? How do we present to council? How do we get the outcome? Yes, it's going to take a bit longer than what we had originally factored, but it's still effectively a block of land in an amazing suburb, and we'll get a great outcome.
Awesome, mate. And I'm going to say bye for now. Real deal in the field. Stay tuned for the next one. We're going to try and do more of these so you guys can actually see what's happening midway through a project, not just at the end of the project. So
thank you, Rob.
No worries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
See ya.